Okay, this is a brief video on the Masterbuilt Sportsman Elite XL pellet smoker. We'll open the unit up here. This is a 44-inch unit. This was the largest cabinet size in the Masterbuilt line at the time of purchase. And as you can see, I've got the middle shelf removed here, or I should say the grates in the middle, because I use that center section the most. So I just keep that one removed, or the one above that. The unit itself, it's as far as the mechanicals go, open this up in the bottom here. You can see right here we have the water tray here, which is running kind of diagonal. That is the grease dripping tray. The grease leads down and goes down a chute and into a cup there in the bottom of the unit. And then here in the middle, this big metal contraption, this is basically a fire block or a heat block. So when the pellets travel down the auger and into the crucible, which sits behind this, that prevents heat from scoring the meat above and or from solidifying the grease that's running across the grease trap there. So here on the right, we have the control panel, which is to the rear of the pellet hopper. There's the pellet hopper itself, and then the pellets are fed mechanically via an auger, traveling down, the length here to the crucible, and the crucible is about the size of a coffee cup. So what I'm going to do here is take the unit apart, take the auger downstairs onto the workbench, and we will do that in 3, 2, 1. Alright, before taking the unit apart and taking the auger and the hopper downstairs onto the workbench, just wanted to take a quick look at the unit with the heat block and the grease tray removed. So this is essentially it. This is the business end of the pellet smoker. You can see there's some ash there. There's some slightly unburned pellets, and that's kind of how it looks when you have those things removed. This here in the front is supposed to be an ash hopper. The ash is supposed to go in there, or you can sweep it into this little tray here at the bottom. So that's how that works. And we'll go ahead and resume the disassembly. Alright, we've got the auger assembly on the workbench. We're going to do a quick walk around of the components, and then we'll kind of dive in and talk about things at a more detailed level. First of all, the unit consists of 3 compartments. This is the control panel compartment, this is the pellet hopper compartment, and this is the transport, which carries the pellets from the pellet hopper to the crucible. And the crucible is right here. It's it's about a little bit bigger than a coffee cup, maybe a coffee mug. And then right here we have the hot rod. I refer to it as a heating element as well, but they call it a hot rod, and we'll come back to that. But let's go back over here to the control panel, talk about this a little bit. And also I should mention, you can do whatever work is necessary on this without removing it from the cabinet and taking all of this apart. But the problem is you have to get down on your hands and knees. That's very inconvenient, and if you want to get to the wiring, you actually have to lay on your back. Considering it's all of 30 degrees outside today, with mixed snow and rain, that's not fun. So much better to bring it inside and work on it in an upright fashion. So this is the control panel, and just a word about this piece of tape. It's really just here to keep the rain and snow out. Problem with this is, as you can see, this flexes. This is like an aluminum backing plate onto a steel casing, and they didn't seal it. The manufacturer did not seal it. There's no gasket. There's nothing to keep water from getting in behind that. So the tape is just temporary. I need to do like a neoprene gasket or maybe RTV or something. I wouldn't caulk it because that's more of a permanent fix, and I may not be able to get this off to replace it at some point, and at some point it may need to be replaced. So this is a very, I would say, mass-produced component. As you'll find as I go on with this this description, there's a lot of shared parts and pieces, or components that are shared across multiple brands of smokers, multiple models, and this is one of them. The control panel, well, it looks like this on a Masterbuilt. If you look at some other brands, you'll see the same exact control panel. It'll have a different facade. The buttons will be in the same place, but you might have a plus and a minus here. You might have a hot and a cold icon, or what have you. You know, different manufacturers try to mix it up to make it look unique, but it's really underneath all the same mass-produced control panels. So here we go. Let's get into the pellet hopper assembly, and down on the bottom here you can see the auger. This is basically a steel tube that travels from here all the way to the crucible, and it's around the diameter of like a cardboard tube for a roll of paper towels. And then you see there's a corkscrew that basically rotates to help move the pellets in that direction. This, when you first turn on the unit, it primes the crucible with probably a decent quantity of pellets to get things going, and then it slows down and it kind of cycles on and off as needed, and you can hear it kick on and off, and we'll get more into that later. So this here is the transport, and on this end is kind of this is the delivery end of the auger. You can see the corkscrew there, and then that would actually flow into this hole and right through here. So pellets would come, they would drop in. Let's go ahead and talk about the crucible, or again, it's also called the fire pot. The hot rod heating element actually inserts into this shaft here, and it goes all the way in, and you can see then there's, like, you know, a stub that sticks out there into the crucible. The pellets come in, they drop in, they're ignited by that rod. Now, a couple things that are interesting to me. First of all, this rod is really the only thing, aside from the burning pellets, it's the only thing that actually creates heat. And if you recall, the cabinet is pretty large. It's 44 inches tall, about 30 inches wide, and maybe 18 inches deep. So that's a lot of cubic volume for this little hot rod to heat. And the operating range for this is 0 to 350 degrees, or about half the maximum temperature of, say, our natural gas grill, which can go up over 700 degrees. But you know, this is a different device for a different purpose. It's really about low and slow, longer cycle times. So this particular hot rod failed. That's why it's out of the unit. There's a new one in the unit, and we'll get into that later. But this one is about 14 months old. It's been used twice a week on average, and the cycle times, again, are what really, I guess, probably wear these things out. You know, you're not, you know, when I cook something on the grill, it might be 10 to 20 minutes at the most, whereas you're going for hours on end with some of the smoking cycles. And as an example, if you do a pork shoulder, you're looking at, you know, 12 to 14 hours that this thing has to be on. Now, it may be at 250 or 275 degrees, but it's got to stay on for that entire time. And if it's cold outside, then it has to, you know, increase the power, increase the heat output to keep the food in the cabinet at the temperature that you have set. So, as you can see, this is pretty rusty. It's pretty corroded. Same thing with the transport here. You can kind of see where the heat line goes back to here, and then everything to the right is painted, everything to the left is corroded and rusty. I considered, you know, possibly repainting this, stripping it, bead blasting it, etc., but that would just be really a waste of time, because eventually it would get back to this state. And Yeah, I'm not going to do that. So next step up here is to flip this upside down, flip this unit upside down, and take the wires out, take the wiring, and pretty much expose how all of this works. In 3, 2, 1. Okay, the unit is now laying on its side. I did consider flipping it upside down, but that was not advantageous, so I went with this approach. It's all disassembled now, and I'll go through each of the parts and the wiring and all of that in just a second. But I did want to say something I forgot to mention. These parts are very common parts found on a number of smokers, and just like appliances in your kitchen or your laundry room, although the brand names are different. You know, these things are readily available. If you go on Amazon, you'll find multiples of these. So you can buy them in kits and sets. You can buy them in multiple kit sets, if that makes sense. And this particular hot rod goes for from a low of $10 to a high of about $30. I'm sure they're all made in China, but there are varying degrees of quality, you know, from the low-end junk to something that would probably work well. And unless you buy a name brand item from a reputable supplier, I'm not sure that you're going to know if you're getting a good one or not. But you know, I bought one that was in the $20 to $25 range, so I'm hoping that will that'll work out. So moving over here to the unit itself, aside from those parts that I showed before that are readily available and you know, at all different price points, this entire assembly is also you can purchase this as one whole unit. You can purchase the controller board separately. You can purchase the fan motors that are in here. I'll get into that in just a minute. You know, you can rebuild this in parts or pieces or components or entire unit if you want to. It's just however you want to approach it. So let's talk about the control board here, and then we'll work our way downwards through the wiring. So this control board, this retails for $130. This is a couple things I've done here. Okay, first of all, this had some oxidation on the solder joints, and it wasn't on all of them, but a few of them. So you know, water was getting behind that cover plate as I described before. And also this compartment here is not very well sealed, although they've got these little rubber seals. You can see there's rust spots down in the bottom here. That indicates water is getting into that space. So even if water's not hitting this board directly, it is you know, moisture that's in that compartment, and it just doesn't help electronics. So what I've done is I've used a silicone conformal coating. I'm going to show the bottle here in just a second when I switch hands, and this is it. Okay, this is something that's very popular to use on FPV drone components, circuit boards, and it's also for high heat applications. This isn't a high heat application because I don't think this board gets very warm. Not like the rest of the unit, but it's not something that is going to melt off. So I actually applied 2 coatings of this silicone conformal coating to the front and to the back of the board, and hoping that will help reduce some of the corrosion and you know, those types of things. So the wiring coming off the back here. Oh, this is actually the fuse holder. Okay, so the wiring coming off the back here. This goes down into the cabinet beneath the pellet hopper, and then comes out underneath, and we'll go over that in just a minute. My problem with this setup is that every time you have to change a hot rod, the heating element, you have to take all 3 compartments apart. My goal is to reduce the amount of labor and just run. You can see I've extended this wiring down into the cabinet below, and I'll show you that in a minute. But the plug was actually right here. You actually had to come all the way up into this compartment to plug this in. And all of this was very nicely zip tied from the factory and all of that. And you have to break all the zip ties because, you know, they're all the cables are bound together. And I'll redo that before I put this back together. But, you know, I just wanted to basically create the ability to plug this in this compartment down here. Okay. And we're going to pull this cover aside. and you see down below, you can see kind of the jumper that I created. It's the red one here, okay? So, and it will be bound. It won't be hitting that fan or anything, but it will be tethered out of the way. But that's created some problems. Before we talk about that, let's talk about what we actually see here. This is the Auger motor, and it's got a fan of its own, and then this fan here, its sole purpose is to keep the transport tube or the auger tube cool, or actually to help prevent backburn. Backburn is what happens when the actual heat is so great that the pellets ignite and they start to burn backwards towards the pellet hopper. Okay, so that fan blows air into that chamber, and you can actually see just from the way the paint is here, where it's burned off and where it's still in place, you can kind of see the effect that that fan is having, keeping that chamber at least cooler on this end. That fan runs from the moment you turn on the unit till 10 minutes after the unit shuts off the last heat cycle. So it's really, again, trying to prevent backburn. And backburn, I've had that happen where, you know, I haven't had an auger fire or anything like that, but I've had smoke come backwards and chase backwards up the pellet hopper. So it works to a degree. I'm looking at this thinking maybe I could modify it and make it even better, but that's a project for another day. Right now, the problem is this unit, since I've worked on it, is tripping the GFCI. And it's never tripped a GFCI before, it's never tripped a breaker, it's never blown a fuse, not until I worked on it. And that's my luck. But if you look online, it seems like GFCI tripping is a really big deal with these types of electric offset pellet smokers, and it's there's no one way to fix it, right? Some people, they replace the control board, some people replace the hot rod heating element, and there's no common single way to fix this or resolve this. Some people never get it resolved, and like I said, some of these, you know, right out of the box, brand new, they trip the GFCI for a number of people. And I know everyone's situation is different. Their wiring in their house might be different, but these things must create a lot of noise or something on the line. So the theory is that we've got some type of resistance issue. Now you can see this is the new hot rod. These are the cables. These cables are actually they're sheathed in some type of heat resistant material. It's like a fiberglass, maybe a nylon or a PTFE or something like that. The wiring inside, the core of the wire is actually aluminum stranded, and that is actually covered in an aluminum foil like material and then coated in this white heat resistant material on top, so the outer jacket. My whole problem, again, running this wire or this connector all the way through that transport up through this cabinet and then all the way up into this control board, unnecessary at best. So I created this jumper that, again, is creating a GFCI issue. I would say one of the culprits probably, and to point these out, this is one of the two wires. You can see I've used a silicone seal, a solder seal on this wire to join these wires, and then I put two different shrink tubings around that. So this is probably pretty secure. But this one, I probably used the wrong connector for the wrong job, right? That's probably not designed for this type of load. It's not melted or anything. It doesn't show signs of fatigue. It's not burnt, but it's probably just the wrong thing. So I'm going to use a normal twist nut. I'm going to take that off and replace that and do the right thing here. I may also take some length out of that jumper cable if I can, and I'll still be able, I still want to be able to plug this in the bottom compartment and just reduce the amount of time and trouble that it takes to change one of these. I've already spent too much time on this project. I've reattached the control panel, and I have flipped the auger unit upside down so we can get a little bit better look at in the light, the mechanicals, the auger motor, the fan motor, the two individual fans, and some of the wiring. So right here is the jumper that I created. I have shortened the wire, I have wrapped the wire in heat shrink tubing, and hopefully that'll take care of any potential voltage leaks, resistance, etc. And I redid that wiring on the top in the control panel with a proper nut instead of the three-way connector I was using before on that 2-into-1 wire. So following this on out, we have the heat rod, or the hot rod, I'm sorry, the heating element connected. So final thoughts here. If you are considering a barbecue smoker, there are really actually four ignition types. I'll talk about those. One is electric, the other one is propane and natural gas, just like with barbecue grills, the same three types of ignition, or the fourth being just straight up wood. And I'll talk about the advantages and disadvantages of each here in just a minute. And then there are three types of wood. There's the stick burner, the wood chip burner, and the pellet burner. Now, in terms of ignition, electric is easy and convenient. We all know that. But the other option that I was talking about there was propane. Propane's great, except like any propane grill, you have to make sure that the tank is full, you have a backup tank, and it's quite possible that you would run out of propane in the middle of a perhaps a long smoking session. So that's something to consider. Natural gas, considering that is sourced from the house, from the natural gas source in your house, that's a really good option because it never runs out. We have a natural gas barbecue grill, and it's fantastic. I like it. And then, of course, there's just straight up wood burning. Now, when you get into wood burning, or stick burning as they call it, and that is your ignition source as well as your smoke source, the problem is that, like any fire, you have to tend it. You have to stay on top of it and make sure that there's enough wood, depending on the size of the bin or the hopper, whatever they call it, for burning wood. You're going to have to refill, and if you're doing an overnight smoking session, then you have to get up in the middle of the night and check the wood and make sure you're loading, that you've got the right temperature, the right amount of smoke, that it's burning cleanly. It's a great way to cook, but it's also a great way to have a lot of manual intervention and having to do a lot to get through the session. So wood chips are another option. Wood chips are kind of closer to what this is here with a pellet smoker, but the wood chip thing is a little bit like the stick burning. You have to get up in the middle of the night, or you have to check on the smoker multiple times throughout the session to make sure that the chips have not burned down. If you have to add more chips, then all that has to be done, and you have to keep an eye on the unit. With this unit, with it being electric and it being a pellet smoker, you load the pellets into the bin, and you power it on. You set the temperature, you set the duration, and you walk away. There's no manual intervention in between. This thing will run all night. As long as there's pellets in the bin, that the bin doesn't run out, you'll be just fine. I assume that eventually they will come up with some type of manual feeding system for wood chips as well, but considering they're irregular in shape and size, that there's really nothing out there right now that can do that. But I'm sure someone's working on it, so that'll come along in time. And finally, my last little comment here on pellets. If you're looking to buy a pellet smoker at some point, then the thing to consider is the actual type of pellets. brand, price, and wood type. This is a competition pellet here. It has a mixture of mesquite, hickory, and cherry. So it's a good all-around pellet. You can buy pellets that are 100% one wood type or another, 100% hickory, mesquite. You could do apple wood, whatever is your choice, and it again depends on the type of meat that you might have on the smoker. But the point is that not all pellets are created equal. As with any wood, there is creosote and there's also ash, and these are things you have to consider. I've tried an entire range of pellets from cheap to expensive. The cheap pellets, they burn not clean. They leave a lot of residue, a lot of ash, a lot of creosote, and they basically just clog up the fire pot or the crucible there, and it creates a lot of work in between smoking sessions, which is unfortunate. This particular pellet here is it's I consider it to be fairly priced. It's good quality. There's not a lot of ash that's produced from this. As I said, you're going to get ash from all types of pellets, but this is a good clean burning pellet, and this is actually from Lumberjack. Lumberjack is a fairly common brand. You can purchase these at any of the big box stores. Home Depot, Lowe's, Cabela's, Outdoor World, etc. But what I will mention is price. And you're going to buy these typically. They come in 20-pound bags. And my outlet of choice for these is Rural King. And the reason being is Rural King it's about $9 a bag for these. Again, $9 for 20 pounds. Whereas if you go to one of the bigger box stores, you're looking at close to $20 a bag, which is about $1 a pound. You can do much better than that. So those are things to consider if you get into the pellet smoking scene, because it's, you're going to be buying these and you're going to want to get a good quality pellet at a reasonable price, and you're going to also have to concern yourself with the cleanup. So that's it. I hope this helps.